This is a mind-blowing topic, and I really think this is an important video, and it's one you're going to watch more than once and share it with your friends and your family, because it helps you understand what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Syria, what's happening with the Iran deal, and how they're all connected. Let's talk about gas, shall we? Who has the most gas in the world? Natural gas reserves. Russia's number 1, Iran is number 2, and Qatar is number 3. Already, just from the get-go, you can see that the foreign policy position in the West towards Russia and Iran is it's not a very friendly one, is it? Qatar is, it's already an ally, so to speak. The Americans, they have troops there, and Qatar has gas, but liquefied natural gas is too expensive, right? So, how do you tackle the gas issue regarding Russia, regarding Iran? It's very difficult. Russia is enormous. Russia, although it's not the Soviet Union anymore, it's still a very, very important power. It's a very tough nut to crack if you want to reduce Europe's gas dependency on Russia, right? Now, what about Iran? There's a very, very bitter history, right? The United States and the UK did a lot of nasty things to Iran. Britain built the Abadan refinery, and, we were robbing the Iranians blind and cheating them. And then when the Iranian Prime Minister, democratically elected Prime Minister Mossadegh, nationalizes Iran's oil, that's the red line, right? You can't nationalize your own natural resources, right? Because it's like the mafia. If you don't give them a cut, they'll get violent. And so as soon as he does that, MI6 and the CIA, so the British and the American intelligence services, they plot a coup and they oust him. And who do they put in his place? The Shah. And the Shah is a lovely person for them, because he is more than happy to let them plunder Iran's oil. He is the United States' number 1 buyer of weapons, right? The top arms customer. And the United States give Iran its first nuclear reactor. They wanted to prop Iran up to be their regional policeman. Then in 1979, the Iranian Islamic Revolution takes place. And of course, the Iranians take back their natural resources. And they kick out all these foreign bloodsuckers. And that's not okay. What do the Americans do? What do the Europeans do? They send Saddam Hussein to deal with Iran, and they give him chemical weapons, they give him biological weapons, weapons of mass destruction. Back then it was okay for him to have them because he was using them in a manner that served U.S. interests. You remember Donald Rumsfeld shaking his hand? Apparently they didn't know he was such a dictator, right? Once the Americans get rid of him, right, tying up loose ends, they've now got Iran surrounded from inside Iraq, so this is to the west, and then they invade Afghanistan as well 2 years prior, and so they've got troops to the east and troops to the west, and then ships and a fleet in the Persian Gulf. That's how serious they take this energy issue. If you don't give us what we want, we are going to harass you until you do. We will coup your government and do whatever it takes. But then just nearby, there's other gas discovered. The U.S. Geological Survey in 2010 announces that there's 122 trillion cubic feet of undiscovered, recoverable natural gas in the Levant Basin province. So where is this exactly? Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. So there's all this gas over here. And when gas is discovered there, the U.S. sets out to take control. They send Qatar, which is, as we saw, a U.S. ally, and they send Turkey, which is not only a U.S. ally, it's a NATO member. They try to win over Bashar al-Assad. They tried this several times, right? Assad and his wife at Buckingham Palace, with the Queen, with Tony Blair and his wife, with Prince Charles, right? They wanted him to liberalize Syria and open up to the West. That was already one thing. So he's not giving them the gas. But then, when they try to make a pipeline from Qatar to Turkey, because remember, Qatar has LNG, liquefied natural gas, but that's too expensive. That's too impractical. You need pipelines. And a pipeline like that, this is cost effective. So the goal here is to provide an alternative to Europe to undercut Russia's market share. Russia is Europe's largest supplier of gas. You got countries like Austria that get 80% of their gas from Russia. They're completely dependent on Russian gas. There's no question. And the West doesn't like this. They can't have it. So they thought, okay, let's build this pipeline. We fixed the LNG issue. It's under 2,000 kilometers. And so, shorter distances, more cost effective. And most importantly, we can reduce European dependence on Russian gas. Bashar al-Assad says no, because this pipeline must pass through Syria. And he says no. And when he says no, that's the red line. I want to read you what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wrote in Politico. He said that secret cables and reports by the US, Saudi, and Israeli intelligence agencies indicate that the moment Assad rejected the Qatari pipeline, military and intelligence planners quickly arrived at the consensus that fomenting a Sunni uprising in Syria to overthrow the uncooperative Bashar al-Assad was a feasible path to achieving the shared objective of completing the Qatar-Turkey gas link. In 2009, according to WikiLeaks, soon after Bashar al-Assad rejected the Qatar pipeline, the CIA began funding opposition groups in Syria. It is important to note that this was well before the Arab Spring engendered uprising against Assad. The United States was not only funding opposition groups, but helping terrorists, right? And who else was doing that? Qatar and Turkey. So they were in bed with al-Nusra, which is basically Al-Qaeda, rebranded. They were in bed with all of these various terrorist groups to get rid of him, no matter the cost. But that didn't work because Bashar al-Assad forged an alliance with China and Russia. China and Russia have permanent seats on the United Nations Security Council. That means they have veto power. I mean, one is enough, but having both of them take a stance to protect Syria carries a lot of weight. And that's what happened. He also became increased Syria's relations with Iran, right? And it's because of Iran, Hezbollah, Russia, that the Syrian army was able to win back most of Syria. But there are other reasons that they wanted to get rid of Bashar al-Assad. The more obvious one is that Syria is part of the axis of resistance. The anti-imperialist, anti-colonial, anti-Zionist axis of resistance. Syria refuses to recognize Israel. Why should it? Israel occupies Palestine. Israel is occupying the Golan Heights. Israelis, 1/3 of the water they drink is stolen from Syria's Golan Heights. That kind of illegal occupation apparently doesn't matter to the EU and the United States. That one's okay. Syria supports Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, Venezuela, all the quote-unquote bad countries that just so happen to have tons of resources and don't like Israel and the United States. Shame on them. Israel's policy is to destroy Syria, keep it in chaos. They want to make sure that Syria is down and kick it while it's down. And this is to the point that they're even supporting Al-Qaeda. Don't take my word for it. I want to show you a clip here from Al Jazeera. This is the former head of Israel's intelligence service, the Mossad.
Okay, you say no preference. There have been reports that Israel has been treating wounded Syrian rebel fighters in its hospitals on the border, including fighters from Nusra Front, which is, of course, the Al-Qaeda proxy in Syria. Do those reports worry you that Israel's helping wounded Al-Qaeda-aligned fighters?
As I said before, in a different context, it's always useful also to deal with your enemies in a humane way. And I think that when you have people who are wounded and you can deal with them in a humane way, the considerations as to whether to take them in are not simply whether it's politically useful or whether it's politically
So it's purely humanitarian, you say. So there's no tactical or political strategic...
I didn't say there's no tactical. I said the main consideration, the immediate consideration is humane.
But the tactical issues involved, I mean, you know better than me the phrase blowback. You don't think there's going to be blowback against Israel if you get into bed with a group like Nusra Front?
No, I don't think so.
He's pretty confident in that answer. As you guys know, Israel is airstriking Syria almost on a weekly basis. They bombed the Latakia port, right? And they made sure there's no way that Syria can explore any of its gas. And who benefits from this war? Well, we just outlined the reasons that Israel does. Originally, if they could get Qatar's LNG, or rather to replace it with a pipeline, particularly under 2,000 kilometers, that would be cost effective, as we said, and it would be easy to transport to Europe. Syria to Greece, man, it's not even 2,000 kilometers. You see how close? And it's not just about war. It's also, well, sanctions are war, which was my next point. It's not just about bombing Syria and destroying the infrastructure and making it chaotic and supporting terrorism. It's also the sanctions. So when Trump put the Caesar Act sanctions on Syria, that means no foreign country or company is going to want to cooperate with Syria to extract this gas. They're not going to want to cooperate in any capacity because they'll get punished too. But that's not enough. You know, Trump, when he withdrew from Syria, he didn't withdraw. He just moved the troops to the oil fields. So now Syria is deprived of another important source of revenue and one of its natural resources. And this is no game. Even though Syria is not a major oil producer compared to Iran or Iraq, for Syria, the oil is a quarter of the government's revenue. That's from the IMF 2010. A quarter. And at the same time all of this is happening, you have the situation in Ukraine that's cooking from 2014. Right? So the idea is let's make sure that Lebanon, Syria, they can't control the resources. Let's make sure that Iran can't do that either. And let's go to Ukraine and make sure that we install a puppet government that, you know, is pro-West, is pro-US, pro-NATO. You know why? Because the Russian pipelines pass through Ukraine. Why do you think Israel opposes the nuclear deal? Like, that doesn't make sense at all, because if the nuclear deal prevents Iran from developing a nuclear bomb, and Israel keeps saying that Iran's developing a nuclear bomb, they're a threat, why would you oppose the one thing that protects you from this perceived threat? It makes no sense. The thing is, Iran is not making a nuclear bomb. They have so many nuclear inspectors from the IAEA. They have seals, cameras. The whole nuclear deal, Iran followed it to the T. That's not me saying that, it's the IAEA. If Iran was building a bomb, the whole world would know. Israel is the one that has nuclear warheads. Israel has refused to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. The reason it doesn't want Iran and the nuclear deal back in motion is because that allows Iran to sell its oil and sell its gas and give out contracts for gas exploration. Do you understand? And they want, just generally speaking, to keep Iran as a pariah, right? Keep it isolated. Keep its banking sector, its oil sector sanctioned, isolated. That's why it opposes the nuclear deal, and of course it does that through the United States. And Trump did them a huge favor. Iran can't sell its gas, can't sell its oil. Syria can't sell its gas or access its oil. Lebanon can't access its gas. And what does Israel do? Oh, it's Israel to the rescue. They send a giant ship, this behemoth, this absolute titan, right to the disputed maritime border. This has been going on for a while, right? So Lebanon and Israel, they do not agree where their respective maritime borders end. Israel doesn't care. Israel's like, you know what? You guys are down. I'm just going to take advantage of the situation and take the gas. Especially when Europe right now is in desperate need, is in dire need of a new gas supplier. Obviously, this can't replace the quantities that Russia provides, but it's very substantial. The Karish gas field, I just want to show you, is right here. Lebanon's response, Hezbollah's response to what Israel did, just out of nowhere, sending this enormous ship to steal the gas before any agreement's been reached, was that if you do this, there's going to be a war because you are violating our resources, our land, our property, our right. And we have not agreed on anything yet. Let me show you this clip from Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah.
الإسرائيليين قالوا أنهم سيبدأون باستخراج النفط والغاز من كاريش بأيلول. إذا بدأ استخراج النفط والغاز من كاريش بأيلول ولبنان بعد ما أخذ حقه يعني إحنا على المشكل. فماذا سنفعل؟ بتشوفوا متى. هلا حقول شو بدنا نعمل.
So he straight up tells them, and this is just one of many clips, he straight up tells the Lebanese people, the Israelis, the world, that if Lebanon is not given what it is owed, what is hers, then we're going to have problems. We're going to have trouble. And the guy asks him, what do you mean by that? And Nasrallah answers, you will see. So Israel wants to be a player, right? They've got the EU Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen, who has banned Russian oil, banned Russian gas. They want all the EU to wean themselves off. And she visits Israel, gives a lovely little speech, explicitly saying that the EU wants Israel to be its gas supplier. Take a look.
Of course, we want to extend our cooperation on energy. It is known that Russia's war against Ukraine has exposed our European dependency on Russian fossil fuels, and we want to get rid of this dependency. We want to diversify to trustworthy suppliers, and Egypt is a trustworthy partner. For us, it's important that we really discuss the whole width of energy supply that is possible. And today we are already taking a very important step, as we have in the morning signed a memorandum of understanding of natural gas delivery from Israel to Egypt, here the liquefying of the gas and then the transport to the European Union. This is a big step forward in the energy supply to Europe.
She's not mincing any words. She's not holding back, huh? This is not me speculating or saying, oh, they're going to do this. She's literally saying it. Israel's going to give us gas. Israel's going to become a supplier. Here's the Jerusalem Post. The headline is, Israel will help free the EU from depending on Russian energy. That's very kind of Israel. That's very kind of them to give gas that belongs to Palestinians to the EU, or gas that belongs to the Lebanese. I mean, people think colonialism ended in 1945. Oh boy. Oh boy. Get a refund from your professors. So what does this mean for us? What does this mean for me, for you? The people who are not EU elites or Israeli elites or American elites or in the ruling class. This means higher prices for gas, for food, for basic necessities. Oh, that's lovely, right? Who doesn't love paying more at the gas pump? Who doesn't like not being able to fight baby formula? Oh, can't have that. We got to send weapons. Billions and billions, literally billions of dollars. Your taxes sent to weapons manufacturers, to people who make war for a living. Millions displaced internally and externally, whether it's Syria, whether it's Ukraine. Innocent people that have nothing to do with politics, that want not a shred of any of this. If people knew what these elites are doing, what they have planned, and why they're doing it, then the Palestinians, of course, what did I tell you? They get nothing. their existence is not even recognized in this matter. It's like the natives in the United States, right? There is no one even mentions them. It's like they're not there. I mean, the level of disrespect is unbelievable. And now, of course, Israel gets to take Russia's market share, not in full, but a good chunk. And who suffers at the end of the day? Because make no mistake, these higher prices are a direct result of the sanctions and a direct result of this stupidity, because European leaders cannot think for themselves and are unable to exercise independent politics, to be independent from the United States. They all talk about independence and liberty, but they're just sheep of the United States. If the United States jump, they say how high. So they cut themselves off from Russian gas and Russian oil just so that it could be rerouted and they pay more. But that's the thing. The politicians they're not even looking at the bill, but you are, I am. So they screw their own people. They do this at the detriment of their own people. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. You have a set of countries, you have certain powers attacking other countries on the other side of the planet to steal their land, to steal their resources, so they can remain in control, so they can remain in power. And that's why this is all connected. They wanted that pipeline so they could undercut Russia's market share. When Syria said no, they destroyed Syria and punished it. And then they started stirring things up in Ukraine so they could intimidate, antagonize Russia with a NATO country on its border, or at least a NATO partner, because they trained those Ukrainian troops to NATO standards, did they not? And they wanted to exert control over the areas where the Russian pipelines pass in Ukraine. And then they finally got these European countries to cut Russia off because of their stupidity and their sheep mentality and their disregard for the reality, for the conditions of their own people, because they're not paying the bills. They don't realize the price hikes. The Iran deal, Trump pulled out of it to help Israel. It was to their benefit to make Iran a pariah. And now they're trying to stall the nuclear deal as much as possible, because they don't want Iran to be accepted to catch contracts, to sell gas, to sell oil, even though the world desperately needs it to drive the prices down. All of this, everything about resources and about power and about control. And now you understand the bigger picture. And it's a very nasty picture. But look how malicious and cunning they are. They will stop at nothing. They will kill and displace millions just to make sure that Russia's market share is undercut, that Russia is undermined, that Russia loses revenue, and that they control the resources.